Okay, dude. One day you will see one of the crazy ones instead of the lame ass ones.
Okay, like this is my second Pure Flix movie I've seen at theater with you,
Yeah.
and it's not good, but
Sure.
I want one of the pure, crazy, insane one. I want a God's Not
Flix
Dead
ones.
25 or something.
I should have waited. We should have waited a couple weeks and gone to see the Trump prophecy in a couple weeks, man. That is going to be everything that you wanted. Like, I wrote to you and I said, hey, man, you want to go see the Pure Flix movie?
It's like, do I?
And when you said that, I was like, he's gonna be disappointed. This is not gonna. Well, I mean, you did.
Like, I'm disappointed, but I'm not disappointed in the way I was hoping I'd be disappointed.
Oh, that's like when Dave goes to see Dave anymore. Dave comes out more mad than when they turn out fine.
Yeah, so we had the best praise you could get going into a Pure Flix film. It's the guy giving us the ticket is like, oh man, have you heard anything about this movie? And
he's older too.
I immediately thought what you thought. It's like, let's let him talk.
Yeah.
Because we don't know if he's gonna be like, it's changed my life, I'm a born again Christian, or if it's gonna be like, it's the biggest piece of dog shit. And it was the dog shit stuff.
It was.
Yeah, he was like, it was, and he purposefully let go of the little microphone. He's like, it was
fucking awful. Because again, the guy was like, at least in his mid-60s. The guy was older. So when he asked me that, I go like, oh, I don't know much about this movie. We go see everything, like, for our job, which is usually how I answer a question like that when I don't know what they're going to say. Laura and I were on a train one time, and we were with a guy sitting across from an elderly couple, and they go like, so you go see all the movies? And I'm like, yeah, and I knew what movie they were going to ask me about. They go, did you see the Sean Hannity movie? And I go,
is it Sean Hannity movie?
Let There Be Light, the Kevin Sorbo one, where like it was like Jesus Bro, but for real. So I knew he was going to ask me about that, and it was like the same thing. I was like, oh yeah, I go see everything. He's like, what'd you think? I'm like, it wasn't for me. Like, I'm like putting it ever
That's
so
a very
lightly.
safe answer.
Yeah. Like, I gave a safe answer. So I didn't know if this guy was going to do that. But yeah, when this guy was going like, man, I went to go see that the other day because I take this job because of all the free movies I get. It was fucking awful. And you were like, yes!
We're so ready for it, man. We're like, ooh. And it's like, there's only one continually funny thing in this movie, and you know what it is.
I do, and it is, and from the trailer alone, I could tell that was going to be the best part of this movie. But there's two great things about this movie. One is that deserves its own conversation about it.
We'll get to it.
The other, and it was what fascinated you about it earlier, is the backstory on the movie. Like, not so much the true story that it's about, but that the movie is kind of a sequel.
And kind of based on a true story.
Yeah.
And the first film was directed by Angelina Jolie.
And co-written by the Coen brothers.
And somehow got bought by Pure Flix.
Yeah.
What was the transition from that? What was the story behind this film getting made?
Oh, it is that transition is insane. The fact that there is a Pure Flix sequel to the movie Unbroken that Angelina Jolie directed about the guy who was in the POW camp. And that Ryan and I saw it and reviewed it, and we didn't like it. Like, like, there's a reason why not many critics really like that movie. Like, it was a good-looking movie.
This was actually a good-looking movie, too. I thought it was pretty nicely shot.
The other one was better shot than this.
Okay.
The other one had, like, an Oscar-winning cinematographer.
Did it? Okay, because from the trailers, it looked like all grainy and green, like a really kind of boring, but it's legitimately nice looking.
If there was one thing about the original that I remember, that it was well shot, especially when the plane goes down, and the first half of it they're like stranded at sea, and then the second half I think is when they're in the POW camp. It was just really not an interesting movie. It was very, very flat. And
that's a shame, because that's like a fascinating story. The backstory they were talking in this, I'm like, this sounds like a story. I mean, it's like you have to kind of really try to make that not interesting.
Especially since the first one was co-written by the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
And it had, and that, I don't know how that happened, like, because you couldn't tell. Like, it was...
Brad, they were too busy writing Garfield.
Yeah, right. It would be like if you found out Tarantino wrote Wind Talkers. Like, how did this... What? Why? But the idea that there is, like, this sequel to this movie, a Pure Flix sequel to a movie co-written by the Coen brothers is insane.
And directed by Angelina Jolie. Just all these elements do not go together.
And
like,
from the director...
all.
And from the director of God's Not Dead, which this is insane. A week ago, Dave and I did a review.
Oh, is this the guy who did God's Not Dead?
This movie's from the director of God's Not Dead. Not only is it from the director of God's Not Dead, but the movie Dave and I saw a week ago, God Bless the Broken Road, which was made 2 years ago and finally got released. Another religious movie, of course. But you can tell the movie was made 2 years ago, God Bless the Broken Road, because it's from the same director as this movie. I've seen two movies, two Pure Flix movies. Well, the other one wasn't technically Pure Flix, but I've seen two religious movies in 2 weeks, both from the same fucking director.
You must be so sick of this guy.
No, I mean, he's directed some of my most watched episodes on the site. I love this fucking guy. Pure Flix is my favorite company. It's much how, like, Tyler Perry's one of my favorite directors for the same reason. So, that would be like if you watched the idea that this is a sequel to the other one, and given who's behind both of them, it would be like if you watched Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds and then was like, ooh, there's a sequel, The Asylum's War of the Worlds 2. Or you went from James Cameron's Titanic to The Asylum's Titanic 2.
I think War of the Worlds is like Left Behind.
Yeah.
Has like this huge religious slant on it. It's just like, where'd this come from?
And that's what this one is. It's like, it picks up from... the first one, it's a different cast. There's different actors in this movie. It picks up from the first one, which it shows to you in like a high school PowerPoint presentation in the opening credits. And they have this clunky exposition dialogue where the guy gets home from the POW
It's so
camp.
weird that they said on the news that you were dead. Like, they say this as they're getting home.
Yeah.
It's like your sister saying that.
They go like, can you believe they said you were dead? And then he's like, I'll bet you didn't believe any of that, did you? And Dad's like, no, son.
Yeah, and he gives this really like, no. and walks in, and I thought there was going to be more with the dad, because that was such a weird read from that guy.
you were sitting next to me, and you go, like, the kid's like, can you believe I'm not dead? And you said, I know, I read it on the news. Or like, I can read the newspaper. I can read the newspaper. That was so weird.
It's one step away from saying, can you believe you're alive? I'm like, no.
I know, right? And then it goes into, he becomes an alcoholic, because he's having flashbacks, which, again, brace yourself on this. Like, so he starts having flashbacks, and then Bob Gunton shows up to say, like, we want you to go around and sell war bonds. So he's, like, drunkenly going on this tour to sell him war bonds.
Where he's literally, to get the point across, he's literally drinking as he's making a motivational speech.
So then I looked at Rita Hayworth's polka dots on her dress and thought, she has 92 polka dots. I'd love to be them polka dots. It'd be like if you're watching Steve Rogers and Captain America, and then by the end of it, he turns into Bible Man. Like, it's crazy. And when Bob Gunton showed up, I was like, well, that's this movie's actor that's too good for this film.
I know, there's two.
But then Gary Cole is in this.
And they're both really small parts.
Really small part. Like Bob Gunton, I could kind of wrap my head around being in a movie like this. Gary Cole, what the fuck? And I turned, he's only in it 2 scenes. And then I picked up my phone and you could tell that's what I was doing.
Yeah, I'm just, it's the guy from Brady Bunch.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I didn't even say anything because I, like, reached over and was like, I was like, it can't be. It can't be. It can't be. And you lean over like, it's Gary Cole. I'm like, what in the fuck is Gary Cole doing in this fucking movie?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, you can make fun of like Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo and stuff being in this movie, but they also have parts. Like, they have actual, like, parts that have, it's like, okay, I see why you got these actors for it, because they're, I mean, not huge names, but well-known enough, you know, to give them a part like this. And this one, like, you know, Gary Cole has, like, a scene and a half, maybe, and then, like, the other dude from Shawshank is pretty much just going, you want to be a part of this? And he's like, yeah, and he goes, he beats a part of it, it's like, you're not ready to be a part of this. And like, that was it. That was like, they're all like, why write the extra money for those two? And
at least Bob Gutton was in different sets and everything. Gary Cole is in this for 2 scenes where he's just sitting behind a desk that couldn't have taken more than 3 hours to shoot.
The cameras are literally in the same spots.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this passage of time, but the cameras are in the same spots. And same lighting, same everything. Couldn't they make it like a rainy day outside or something? Something a little different?
It is always sunshine in these movies. Yes. Like when he's stranded out at sea, which looks like a high school production putting on the first Unbroken movie, where it's like this set with this starry backdrop in the background. The starriest night you've ever seen, way more so than the first movie.
You keep expecting the Orion logo to go every time you see it.
Kind of ambling. Wow. So, okay. The best part of this fucking movie, and I could tell this from the trailer, is so many times in this movie, like, okay, he's an alcoholic, he has PTSD, and you know that from the title, the name of the movie is Unbroken, Path to Redemption. So that's the kind of movie it is. It's a redemption story. He ends up finding Jesus by the end of it. So, and I think it's based on like the second half of the book. And all right, so the Japanese guy who was like the main one holding him captive in the first movie. The bird, thank you. Yeah, the bird. Watanabe.
This dude.
This is the best. Like, every time this guy showed up in, like, flashbacks in this movie and is, like, a ghost, like, picture the craziness of the dead girl showing up in Wicker Man and multiply it by, like, 100, and that's this ghost Japanese guy who keeps showing up to him in the movie to fuck with him. And we there was a few other people in the movie, and like every time
we're trying not to laugh
like this,
too hard.
But we did, man. And of course we were the youngest ones in there by like 40 years. Yeah. So like it was hard not to crack up every time this guy showed up.
Well, because it just got sillier and sillier every time, and he kept showing, like, you're kind of waiting for it. You're thinking like he's gonna open the door, and there he is. His wife gives birth. There he is. Like, we kept making up like, is the waiter gonna be the bird? Is the doctor gonna be the bird?
And you were close when you went to use the restroom at one point, because a few times this guy shows up in the movie. Is one time, the main dude and his wife are out on a date. They're going to a movie, and it's like a black and white newsreel. And then the guy shows up in the newsreel like it's like wartime, like what's like fucking Pleasantville or something like that, where he shows Purple Rose of Cairo, where he shows up like in the film reel, looking at him like you thought you could escape me.
Okay, no, that's my favorite. So every time this guy shows up, if they want to do this with any legit seriousness, he wouldn't say, you can't get rid of me, I'll never leave, you can't escape. Like, doesn't that go without saying if he can't get him out of his head? He doesn't need to say that.
That is all the guy says throughout it. He shows up in the film reel, he shows up in their bedroom to scream at him while he's asleep. And this is after, it gets insane even before he shows up. Like, at one point, dude is asleep the main guy is asleep in bed. Suddenly water comes out of the floor and a shark's fin.
No, okay, here's the crazy thing. There's this, I thought was actually at first kind of effective, because he's just sleeping there, and then suddenly, like, through the wood panel, like, water drips through, and it doesn't look like CG, it looks really real, and then I thought, like, man, if they stop there, that's like really clever. But then a shark fin pops up, and he falls in, and he's drowning, and there's like, you can't escape me! Yeah, the bird underwater grabbing him, like, ha 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 ha!
Oh!
That's crazy.
That's right. Later on in the movie, where again it's a flashback to him stranded out at sea. He falls in the water. Sharks are surrounding him. Then he looks down, and now the Japanese guy's like a shark, or like he's the ghost of Jason Voorhees pulling him down underneath the water. Like, this kept happening in the movie. And at the restaurant, when you got out, he meets up with a character from the first movie. I went to his bathroom,
by the way. I didn't get out. Like, I gotta get out. It's too much.
Yeah. It's too insane. Like, yeah. So, like, so the character that Domhnall Gleeson played in the first movie is in this, not played by Domhnall Gleeson.
Oh, God, I would so see that first movie if this guy was in it, this actor playing that part.
The guy who played the friend?
No, I'm sorry, not the friend, the bird.
In
this, yeah.
I can't remember who played him
If that's the dude, I would so see that movie.
He's a little bit more well acted in the first one, I remembered, but like, when like one of the other guys from the POW camp shows up at the restaurant, and then the dude's like, so that was some crazy times at that POW camp, man. Whew, that bird was the worst. And then they start talking about that, and this like flute, these like Japanese flute music starts playing over it, and then the waiter comes and puts down rice, like, I didn't order rice. You see like the Japanese guy goes like, and then it turns into maggots inside the rice, and he starts screaming at the guy about rice, and we kept coming up with different ways to parody this film, because you could have, like, when he's asleep next to his wife, you could have him turn around and the Japanese guy,
you can't get rid of me, honey.
Like, kiss me, sweet, kiss me, fat boy, and like gives birth to the son, the babies, the Japanese guy. Even later on, when he gives up booze, when the main guy gives up booze, and he's like just getting all the bottles that are hidden throughout his apartment, we turn around at the same time, like, oh, watch, he's gonna get it out the kid's diaper.
Yeah, takes out the bottle. Yeah, because like a lot of hiding places for this. Mm-hmm. And it gets crazier and crazier. And finally, at the end, I don't think we're giving anything away. No. He finds Jesus. It's a Pure Flix film.
Yeah.
And he's walking out, and like the preacher, what's his name again?
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham, he's walking out again. It's like the third time they tried to take him to church. But by the way, the first two didn't work. I just give up. But he's walking out, and Billy Graham says, stop. You can leave while I'm preaching, but not while we're praying, which is a weird rule.
Yeah.
And he looks up at the stars and whatever. He finally is filled with God or whatever. But the soldier is still there among or the Japanese guy is there. And he's like, look at me. Look at me.
Look at me. And then main dude turns around and goes and kneels and finds Jesus, and Japanese guy.
Yeah, just, look at me. Look at me. You lost another to Jesus.
Why does this figment of this guy's imagination have an arc? Like, how is this happening? And the dude playing Billy Graham is like Billy Graham's grandson in real life, but it plays him with these, I don't know if it's fake teeth that he has in his eye. I couldn't tell, but he looked like Salvatore from Mad Men, but with fake teeth, and was coming across more like a car salesman.
Well, I was saying, because I knew the name Billy Graham, but I didn't really know from what, and you were telling me he was kind of this famous televangelist and stuff, this really big name speaker. And they have a footage of him at the end. They actually play, which was actually kind of neat to see, this black and white footage of Billy Graham speaking, introducing this dude, and the dude goes up, he's a lot older, and he pretty much tells the story very briefly of what happened, in his life, and how he found God and everything. And just that little bit of him introducing this guy, I said, I can see why people would listen to him, would follow him, there was this kind of genuine, like, he really believed it thing, and I didn't get any of that from this guy playing him, which I guess is his son, right? Or his grandson,
I think.
Yeah. And it's no disrespect to him or anything. I just didn't, like, I'm listening to this guy, having never heard Billy Graham before, and I'm just like, this guy's a bore. This guy's a nothing. This guy just sounds like he's reading a script and trying to sound holy and trying to sound, and it's like, why would all these people follow this guy? But
before television.
But the footage they showed later, I'm kind of like, okay, that makes a little bit more. I even said, I'm like, was that Billy Graham? Because that sounds like a guy people would kind of follow.
Yeah.
Like you could see like how he would convince people, and like there was kind of a charm to. I know nothing about it, so I mean, but I can see why people would say, "Oh, I want to listen to this guy. I'm interested in this guy." Yeah, and that was not in the performance of the grandson.
Another place the Japanese guy could have been one of the choir members in there, just like putting the hymnal down. Every breath you take,
I'll be watching you.
If that happened to that extent, this would be one of my favorite movies of the year. Like throughout some of the ridiculousness of the movie, like the ghost of the Japanese guy who kept showing up in random things, like despite like all of that and like the clunky exposition dialogue, oddly enough, there's a lot about this movie that is better than the first one.
One more. I got one more. Okay.
Yeah.
Because this is the other scene that made me laugh. It's another kind of flashback scene or post-traumatic thing where it's like before where the water is coming up from the ground and everything, but he's in an elevator and it just closes like the Wonka Vader from hell, and just water starts rising up again like he's drowning, and it's like, okay, it's a little silly, but whatever. But my favorite thing is in the elevator while the water's like up to his chest, he pushes the button on the comic, goes, help, and I'm just, what do you think is gonna happen? That's the fifth person that's drowned in there. Yeah, we'll go get you. Just something about, I just feel like that's not how it works. You really feel like you're in the water and it's just for a bit. Like you feel like you're fully there. It's not like, oh, well, I'll call the elevator guy. He'll get me out of this drowning water.
Well, hell, that was kind of a follow-up to the part where the Japanese plane starts shooting at him while he's laying on the couch.
Okay, that's another great point. Okay, so they're one of these, again, it's kind of clever. He's on the couch and the couch just kind of jumps. Like that,
like
and
it was possessed.
Around. Yeah, and then it jumps again and moves, and then starts the flashback. I was thinking, in a better film, that would have been creepy.
Yeah,
because
totally.
like here it's kind of like a cartoon, but I'm thinking like that's probably what it's like, where you do just feel like these jolts and your back and saying like that could be done so well, but here it's just a little too silly.
It's like if it did have the cinematographer of the first one, like I really wish it did in a lot of ways. Especially it's like. Even this movie needed another pass of the script too, because to go back to
it's
the
not a good
dialogue,
script.
Like when he's interviewed for a job, because he's kind of a celebrity, even though like this is a pretty low budget movie, so it only according to this, they only have like 5 family members and 5 people that know them.
Even the wedding has like 5 people.
Yeah, there's only the same 5 family members there at the wedding and when the baby's born. And then, so he's kind of a celebrity, and then he goes to get a job at this like milk company or something like that, and the guy's interviewing him, and the tone and shift and segues are weird, because the guy interviewing him's like, oh, you're so great, you're just an inspiration.
It's like, I can't believe your name is here, my place to get a job. It's like that very obvious explain dialogue.
But then the way it segues, like he's like, I saw you run in the 36 Olympics and it was so great. Now let's talk about buttermilk.
Yeah, we just looked at each other like, whoa, shit got real.
Yeah.
We're talking about buttermilk, man.
It's like, one word, Benjamin, plastics. Like, what? This took weird. Like, okay, that's the take they went with. But throughout all of that, it is paced better than the first movie.
We're making this movie sound honestly kind of crazier than it is.
Than it actually is.
It's because there's actually not as much craziness to focus on. It's just really that one element, the flashback, and then just some awkward little things, you know?
It's like if you had 15 minutes worth of stuff that you could get really, really good material out of, and then the rest of it's just sort of a melodrama to sit through.
Yeah, this felt like a TV movie from the 90s.
That's absolutely, yeah.
Like it's a little corny, but it's not like, oh my God, can you believe they put this out there? It's like, no, this is like, the performances are decent.
Are actually really good. The main guy, that's one thing I'll give. There are some aspects that I'll give this one over the first movie, which is weird to say, again, about a Pure Flix movie that's a sequel to something co-written by the Coen brothers. Like, this movie is paced better. It's not as much of a slog to sit through. It wasn't as boring as the first one.
The only time where we're starting to lose it, I think, is at the end, just when they're starting to talk about it. It's like his 10th bottle he's hit it or gotten drunk at the bar or whatever. And I think we were both like, can you just find Jesus?
Yeah, we were. We were like, all right, I know where this is going. Find Jesus. Let's wrap it up.
But weirdly enough, even with that, I like that because they take him to this church or this tent, whatever it is. And they're playing the music, and you're thinking, okay, well, this will be where he finds God. And he leaves. And it actually takes a couple times for it to sink in. And even though I'm already kind of ready for this movie to be over, I kind of respect that they did that. It wasn't like the first time he went there, it worked.
Estes Perkle could have done this in one church visit. It doesn't... If this were made in the 80s and throw in, like, if I ever come to Jesus, I'll come all the way. Like, I miss that. That's what I want out of my redemption movies. So once it gets towards the end, it is like that. You're like, all right, I know where this is going. Let's just wrap this up. But it didn't feel as much of a slog to sit through as the first one. The first one is better directed. It's better shot. It's more ambitious than this movie is. But again, the pacing in this one is better. And honestly, some of the acting is better in this one. The main guy is actually really good in this movie. The wife is good in the film. He's actually given a lot more to work with than Jack O'Connell was given in the first movie.
Well, especially like I said, because this is not a well-written movie.
No, it's not.
It's not like the worst written, but it's not very well written. And I think about a lot of the lines that they said in this, I'm thinking, written down, that is very hard to make a lot of this dialogue natural. And a lot of these actors do a good job.
Him especially.
Especially, and the wife, too.
No, yeah, she is very good.
I felt, and it's mostly their movie. I like how it's kind of on the two of them throughout most of it. And I think you kind of get that when you come across actors who, and I don't blame them, because again, this is hard dialogue to make sound natural, but like the best friend who they got because they couldn't get Jonah Hill, he's kind of like the wacky, silly, overweight guy, just like, yeah, right, let's get some dames,
Let's get some dames, next one's on me. Whoa, I haven't even had my breadsticks yet.
Was that the guy who said the bird? He was the worst.
No.
Was that the guy? Okay, that'd be amazing if that was
No, the guy who said that was like a dude who was only in it for one scene, but he was a character from the first one who survived the POW camp.
And some of like the sisters and stuff didn't always say the lines right. They said it like a sort of corny TV movie and stuff. And it's one of those where it's like, well, this is kind of how with this script you would expect everybody to say the lines like those characters. And again, I don't entirely blame them. These are tough lines to make sound natural.
Yeah.
The two leads I think did a pretty good job.
No, they did. They really. It is. Considering this is from the same director as the one I saw last week.
So it's the same guy who did God's Not Dead?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I know, it's like, why have I seen all of this guy's filmography? There's Orson Welles movies I haven't seen.
This is a huge step up. I mean,
it's a step up from the one I saw last week. Like, it's not great, but it does have... The acting's better than the one I saw last week. The story's better than the one I saw last week. By the end of it, it is a really positive message about forgiveness, where he's faced with all of these Japanese soldiers who tormented him in the POW camp, and he goes to all of them and is shaking their hands, and it does have a good message to it. I'll give it that.
I also like to... I mean, I guess this isn't quite as big an issue now, but I mean, like, back in the 80s and 90s, they would have rewritten it where the bird was there, or he does come across him or something
Yeah.
like that, and they didn't have him in there, and they even say what happened to him, but they don't write a fake meetup or anything
Yeah.
like that. And I kind of respect that, even though this actor was so funny as the bird, I would kill to see these two together.
I know.
But I, again, on a
Playing
legit
chess.
Your move, I'll never leave. He's all the chess pieces. There's just there's so much you can do with this guy. Okay.
I know. It's like, because of this element, I wish the rest of it was worse.
Yeah.
Because, like, there is so much great things you could. I almost wish I saw this before before I wrote Jesus Broad. I don't know how I would have written that in there. That the
No. You can have Farad's flashbacks. Like,
oh
you
yeah,
keep seeing him.
okay, yeah, that's true. Like
For Jesus Bro too.
yeah, exactly. Like Farad is getting flashbacks and like someone's fucking torment showing up in a jar of cookies or some shit. Oh man, but it's this is a hard movie to recommend because like there are good things about it, but I'm like, how do you say like, well, of course you should watch this in this circumstance. I don't know. Like, I guess if you watched the first one and liked it, then sure, here's this one that does some things better. You know, the acting's good enough. I could at least say if you're curious and you want to see it on Netflix, go for it. There's worse you could watch in this genre.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you see the trailer and you're like, I want to see this, kind of knowing what it's going to be, it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's really one of the, I mean, especially, they used to make religious movies like pretty damn good back in the day.
Sure.
I think of stuff like Lilies of the Field or the big religious epics or something like
Cecil
that.
B. DeMille movies.
Yeah. So even like sort of the social religious movies and stuff, you know, that they used to make really good ones. So it's one of those things where even when I see like a passable one, I'm like, okay, because there's so many horrendously bad ones. I kind of want to encourage the okay ones. But at the same time, the bad ones are so entertaining.
They are much more fun to sit through than the bad ones are, but I totally agree. Because like when I've had to review stuff like All Saints or I Can Only Imagine or Risen, the bar is just different on that kind of movie. Like when I sit there and watch it and I'm like, okay, well some of these aspects are good and overall the message is fine, then I'm pretty lenient on it because again you have those God's Not Deads of the world and the War Rooms of the world and Old Fashioned and God's Club and movies like that, and this movie is so much better and has a much better message than movies like that.
The cynical asshole in me wants to see more shit like God's Not Dead and
same
War
here.
Room, but for the people that actually go and see these movies and deserve better messages and better thought out, positive, respectful messages, it's like, I do want to say, more of these, please. You know, like these are better movies to get out there.
But every once in a while, another saving
Christmas,
please. Every once in a while. Please,
no. For the cynical asshole in me is like more of those, but like for the people that actually go and see these movies, that really, if you're seeing those movies and thinking they're good, you need better role models.
Oh my God.
I feel like these are kind of better role model movies.
No, they are. But hey, you know, there is the Trump prophecy coming in a couple of weeks. So there is that bullshit, man. Any other final thoughts about the movie? Like, it's okay. It's fine.
I mean, I can definitely see why someone wouldn't like it. I'm not shocked if it is kind of corny and everything.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's, again, if you're gonna see this film, it's not a film that, you know, people like us that want to see the super bad ones are gonna laugh at, except for the bird.
Except for that guy, who was amazing.
Yeah, but if you're someone that like saw this trailer and you're like, oh, that looks like a positive movie, they'll have a good message. It's that, you know, it's a little corny, but it's like, it's decent. It's totally fine for what it is.
No, it is. And you're right. The audience who this is made for will like it, and it does have a good message to it. And the acting is surprisingly really solid in a lot of parts of it. So, and it did do some things better than the first one. would probably even recommend it over the first one.
I've never seen the first one, so I don't know.
The first one is a better made movie. It's a better made movie, but this one was easier to sit through. So at the end of the day, it's like, I would probably recommend this over the first one.
This one probably has more laughs.
It does. By far and away it does. Oh, yeah. Yeah, man, if they had the Japanese guy popping out of, like, fucking rice and shit in the first movie, then, like, oh, yeah, then I would say, well, clearly the first one's far superior. But
now
no.
I'm going back to even before when they bring the cake out. I just want to see the guy's face just, ha-ha, I'll never go!
Out of the cake? Yeah.
Like a sexy dancer just pops up, ha-ha, I'll never leave!
I wish it went that far. Oh. All right, so once I get back to Springfield, I'll be seeing what all comes out this week. Life Itself comes out. House with a Clock in Its Walls comes out. So I'll be checking those out when I get back to town. So until then, hey, at least there's another Pure Flix movie. Technically. See you guys.